how to deal with forms. So we learned form related interactions. These all we are discussing related to events. While working with events, different types of events, we discussed about uh, button events, mouse events, keyboard events, timer events, and we are learning about form events. We are discussing about the form events. And in the form events, what is the concept about form events? We have on submit, another one is on reset. In this, we discussed about how to handling forms using third party. We saw how to handle forms in a general way. Handling forms in a general way lengthy process. Then we used a third party, and which third party we are using? Formik. We are using Formik. In Formik, what we learned is how to design the form and how to submit data using a form. This is the basic thing we learned. Now, today we will learn another concept. And what is that concept here? Yeah. So today we will see another one. And what is that? How handle validations. That means today we are learning about validations. So how we can handle validations and how do we work with the validations, right? So see validations, how do we work with the validation? So what is the concept of validation? Generally, what is validation? What is validation? Just check. Online people, is it clear now, everyone? Is it audible to everyone others? Yeah, yeah. So some people may have connection issues. They need to check themselves. Huh? Right. Okay. So what is the concept of validation? The concept of validation is to verify whether the values that user input are according to the requirement. So generally validation is the process of verifying user input. Validation is the process of verifying user input. So verifying user input. And why we need to validate? Make sure that dictionary unauthorized data is not stored into the database. That is the main aim. So validation is required to ensure that contradictory and unauthorized data is not get stored into database. Contradictory and unauthorized data is not get stored into the database. Validation is required to make sure that unauthorized and contradictory data is not stored into the database. right? So now how you can validate the data in React? That means in React, how do you validate? Usually validation manually we can perform, or by using ready-made functions we can do that. Already last session introduction I showed you that point. So in React, actually, what is meant by contradictory means, suppose you are expecting number and they are sending a string. That means that is not valid. You are expecting some 4, they are sending some 10. That is unauthorized. That is contradictory, unauthorized. How you can validate? How you can validate here is actually Formik. Formik supports validation function and validation schema. It supports two techniques: validation function and validation schema. Formik supports these two things: validation function and validation schema. Right. So we will see two methods. First, we will see what is validation function, and then we will see what is validation schema, how it works. Validation function means manually you have to write the validation, and you need to define the validation. So, what is validation function actually? Validation function. So you have to write validation function. You have to write validation function explicitly and validate the input values. Input values. It requires all JavaScript data type verification, string functions, etc. It requires all data type verification, string functions, etc. We have to validate by using this data type verification, string functions, regular expression, etc. Regular expressions, everything we need to use. So manually, we have to verify the values and validate the values. That is actually validation function. Let's see how to handle this, means how we can use this. So we are having a simple design. Just we are having one small design like this. I am using only these 3 details initially. Okay, this is a form we are having, and we want to validate the form. Remember, it requires a lot of phases. I told you one by one we were learning all the techniques and implement finally at the end. All these we will implement finally. So now I want validation here. Validation is when user tries to submit without entering any data. When user tries to submit, it is submitting empty. It should not be like that. That means username is required, age is required, city is required. Username minimum 4 characters it must be. Age must be a number. All such validations are important. Then how do we write the validations in React? So let's see, especially while using Formik. So what we need to do here is we are having a Formik and it is collecting these values and submitting the values, and we want to verify whether these values are according to the requirement or not. We need to check whether the values like username, age, city are according to requirement. Then how to do this? So first what we have to do is we need to write a function. This function name will give us validate user. That is the function. Okay. What this function have to do is should take all the values, verify whether the values are according to requirement. If not, report what is problem. That means what this have to do is this function should return errors. So we will create an errors object. It is an errors object. And this function have to return that errors object. Formik validation requires a validation function that returns all the errors. That means in Formik, when you are writing validation, your validation function should return errors. Those errors Formik can recognize and it can report. It can report those errors. So what we need to do? Validate user. Validate user is a function. It should return the errors. Errors related to whom? Related to name, city, and age. These are the fields. So it is expecting form data. It is expecting form data. Form data means the form, the details will be displayed. From the form, the data will come. And what is this form data? Form data is an object which contains key and value. Key is what? Field name. Value is the value you entered in the field. So now this form data contains three fields. What are those? Username, age, and city. So we need to identify what are the problems in them. We need to return. That means this form data is having three fields. Let's write here first. If form data, that means the form data have a field. What is the field? Username, dot username. That means we are expecting username field. Okay, if username dot length is equal to 0, what does it means? That means username is not having any value. If it is equal to 0, then what should happen? If username length is 0, that means it is not having anything. What should happen? If it is not having anything, then we need to report an error. That error should be related to some username. That means this errors object contains an username, and this username, what is the error? Message. What message you want to store? I want to store the message like username. What is it required? That's how we need to define. That means this errors object contains errors about three fields. You can write them if you want. Which one? Username error, age error, another one, city error. Because error messages are string type, all are string type. That means now what should be the error messages name required. We can write multiple condition, else we are writing another condition. If form data dot username dot length is less than 4, then we want to display errors dot username is equal to So here we will say name to short. Will display that message. That completely depends on your JavaScript skills. That means in JavaScript, how you write a condition for validating different concepts. Whether it is a string, is it minimum 4, maximum 10, is it having uppercase letter or not, that we need to write matching patterns we need to write. So technically, we have to collect the field, verify what is the requirement, and if it is not matching the requirement, report the error. So this is the error you return for username. Similarly, I want error for age. So I will write here another condition. If what is it? Form data dot age. Age is equal to how you can verify is it having a value or not. You can use empty string as right. You have different techniques. We can use them. If it is empty, then what should be the errors? Errors dot what? Errors dot age. It should say age required. That message we need to display. Okay. Otherwise, if it is not empty, then what we have to display? We have to check is age a number. How to verify whether the value is a number or not in JavaScript? How to verify whether the value is a number or not in JavaScript? We have to use is nan. If it is not a number, what is not a number? So form data dot what? Age. If it is not a number, what should happen? If it is not a number, what should happen? If it is not a number, then errors dot what? Age. Errors dot age is equal to it. We should display some message. What is the message? Age must be a number. Okay. And remember here, if it is greater than 4, then errors dot username we will keep empty. That means don't show any message. Here also same. If it is satisfied, then else errors dot what? Age. So errors dot age is equal to empty. Don't put anything. That means we are just giving an empty string here. You can use single quote, double quote, anything. I am uniformly using a single here. Okay, fine. Now this is for age. Now, how do you verify whether city is selected or not? How do you verify whether city is selected or not? You cannot use any required because even first option is also a city. Then we will do one thing. What is that? For first option, we will give a value as no city or simply -1. And what is the value for this? The value is Delhi. And what is the value for this? This is Hyderabad. You can give anything. -1 is a tradition to indicate that it is not a member of this list. If it is not a member of the list, then we represent with -1, negative. You can give anything. That means if they selected the first one, that means it is not a city. Then what we have to do? Here we need to write a condition again. What is the condition? If, what is it? If form data dot what? City. If form data dot city is equal to -1. If it is equal to -1. If it is -1, what should happen? Errors dot what? City. So here we will put city. Please select a city. Please select your city. Something like this. Select your city. This is the message it should come. Select your city. Otherwise, It should display errors dot city. It should be empty, nothing to display. That is how we write the conditions. Suppose you have to write a condition based on regular expression. For example, we have data term mobile and we have a data definition input is equal to text. And here on change, Formik dot handle change. Okay, I will add one more field into this. What is that field? It is mobile. Mobile is an empty string. I need to verify one more here. So in this we need one for, what is it? Mobile. Mobile. So what is about mobile? So here we are writing another condition. If form data dot what? Mobile. If form data dot mobile, this mobile dot match. You know that we verify regular expression by using which method? Match. If it is matching with regular expression, how to write regular expression? Slash slash. That means slash plus 91 and slash d and 10 digits number. If it is matching, then errors dot mobile is equal to empty. Don't show any message. Otherwise, you put a message. What is it? Errors dot mobile. You put a message invalid mobile. Invalid mobile. These are all the conditions you have to write. That means manually you have to write the conditions, and now this errors object is having all the errors related to your fields. This function should be used, it must be used by your Formik. So after initializing the values, now here when you are trying to submit, you have to use validate. Validate, given already definition in previous class. Validate uses a validation function. What is the validation function name? Validation function name is what? Validate user. That is the function name. That's it. That means now what Formik will do? It will use this function to verify these values. Verify those values. That means whatever initial values are there, these initial values are passed into function. And what that function is going to do? Function is going to collect those values as form data. It will verify those values. And if there are any errors related to those values errors will be stored here. That means this validate user is finally returning all the errors and giving to Formik. Now Formik have to display these errors. Then actually Formik, you can see where to display error. Name related error should display here. That means we are using a data definition. Here we need to display the name related error. Now Formik is having an errors object. This errors object is going to collect all the errors written by your validate function. What errors are written by validate function? Those errors it can collect. So which field related error? So which field related error? Username related error should display. And usually I want to display in text danger. That means red color. Below age, what we want to do? Here we need to display Formik dot errors dot what? Age. And this is also text danger. City related error below. Here plus text danger and the city related error. So Formik dot errors dot what? City. Okay, next mobile related error. So here same. So we need to put Yeah. So class text danger, and this is Formik dot errors dot mobile related error should display there. Now all the configuration is ready. Now let's click on submit and see. When I click on submit, then it is showing some data. That means it is saying that some form data is submitted. What is match? That means match function is not finding. Where is that? Where is that? Acha, this field requires a name. This field needs a name. Na? Name is what? Mobile. We are not giving the name. We have to make sure that we given the names. Huh? Every field requires a name. Submit, it will show. That means it is going to display those errors. Invalid mobile because we haven't written any condition. You have to write the condition. You see now I'm entering the name. While entering the name, I'm entering name too short. Then the name is correctly entered, then it is fine. Each I entered is string, so that means actually string is not allowed to enter because we give an input type as what? Input type as number. So we entered some number, that is fine. You will see the difference if we will make it as input type as text, then you can see is and an also will be working. Huh? That means here, yeah, I submit, then it shows I entered some name and name too short, age, you entered a string, it must be number. I'm entering some age is required, some number I entered. And city, I am selecting Delhi, I am selecting Hyderabad, it's fine. I am selecting the first one, then please select city. And we are selecting the city, then it is okay. Entering the mobile number, that means I am using 987654321. It is same, and I am using plus 91. Now it is okay. But still it is not completed. We just written only validation. There is another statement. If all fields are valid, then submit the form. Currently, you see when I click submit, it's not working because we haven't written that logic. That means if all are valid, then we need to submit. Next levels we will see how we can manage. That's what we said. Part by part, we are learning what features it have. All together we will combine in one. Then you will understand that okay, this is enough. This will handle all the situation. So first point, how to verify the values. How to verify the values? You can verify the values manually by writing the function. It requires complete your JavaScript skills, JavaScript functions to understand to write the validation. This is the concept of validation function. Validation function. So what is the process? How we do that? Syntactically, how we do? First point. So you have to configure a function that that takes form data as input and returns error errors object errors object returns errors object. That takes the data as input and returns error object. So syntactically, so means you have a function validate user. This will take the form data and it is going to have errors and it should return errors. That is the first thing. So you need the form data to handle. Next, second step, what we need to do here is, here form data is a is an object type parameter that contains, it is an object type parameter that contains key value collection. And what is key? Key is field name. Key is field name. This field name comes from defined in initial values. In initial values, what you define, it will come from there, defined in initial values. So form data comprises of data coming from this location. Okay. Now, what we need here, next point, you have to write validations manually for every field and report errors in error object. So you have to write validations manually for every field and do that. So if form data dot field name is equal to some empty, then errors dot the field name is equal to error message. Just roughly, I'm giving a syntax. You need to write like this. So we need to write one validation function. And that remember, there is no question of if I don't write like this, what will happen? What will happen? You have to write logic. That means now it's like school kids asking like, sir, if plus 9 1 I don't write, what will happen? Have you written any logic for that? Nothing. So that means every concept requires logic. So it doesn't know what you think in your mind. The artificial intelligence is not so high level. It can see your face and understand what you want. Right? You need to write logic. What will happen? Nothing will happen. So for which validation you written, only that will work. You written for lowercase will work. You written uppercase, it will work. What you written, only that will work. What else you want, you write. You want more, you have to write everything. Every case you have to write. There is nothing like automatically something will happen. Everything requires logic. Right? Now once you define what we need to do, so assign the validation function to Formik validation. Formik validation. Assign the validation function to Formik validation. That means what we have to do in use Formik. So we have a constant now. Formik is equal to use Formik. So in use Formik, you have initial values, and after that you define validation. Validation is, so this validation function, whatever validation function you return, that's how we need to do. On submit and all will be there. You just need to point towards the function. That means you don't need to use any parenthesis here. That means before submitting the values, it is going to verify the values by using a validation function that you return. You manually return the validation function, it will use that. And next point, how to prevent the errors, right? So you can access the errors and display in UI by using errors, Formik.errors, by using Formik.errors. That means what we have to do, Formik.errors, errors.field name. In that field name, what error message is stored, it will display that error message. Right. So this is the basic approach of validation. This is one concept, and it's not necessary that everybody have to use it. But we need to use this in some occasions because we have shorter solution also, but that shorter solution will not be a solution every time. Then we need a combination of all. That's the reason we are learning all techniques. That means without any ready-made validations, you have to write your own validations and verify. This is one concept. Example I will give here. Same form demo dot what JSX. I will copy this. This is form demo.jsx and we are copying this. This is the example. Now we have another technique. Another technique is writing this validations. All this is very lengthy. Instead of doing that, ready-made validations are present, we can use them. Ready-made validations are present, we can use them. For that, we have another option is YEP library. We have an YEP validation library. YEP validation library. So we have YEP validation library. Now here another concept is this YEP validation library. What is specialty of this library is it is already having validation schema. That means ready-made validation functions. You just attach them to your fields. That means it will take care about verifying. That means whether it is required or not, whether it is a number or not, whether it is minimum these number of characters or not. Everything we can put by using ready-made schemas. That means what is the specialty of YEP is YEP provides a validation schema. Schema is a structure. YEP provides a validation schema. It comprises of predefined validation functions. It comprises of predefined validation functions, which you can use to validate the input values. which you can use to validate the input values. So it have ready-made validation schema which you can use to validate the input value. So how do we do that? So how we can handle this? Install YEP library. You have to install the YEP library. So first you install the YEP library into project. So it is same npm install YEP and save. That is the YEP library. And after that, if you want to use validations in your fab, there are two techniques. You can import only which validation you want and you can use it. Or you can import all validations. That means the second step, import the validation schemas into component. So we have two techniques. We can import like required, like min, like max, like matches from YEP library. This is one technique. That means it will import only what you need. It is going to import only what you need. Or you can import asterisk as YEP from YEP. What it will do? It is going to import all. That means all the schemas are imported. You can use which one you want. So you can import only specific schema that you want, or you can import all. Asterisk represents all. It imports all. So that is required. So importing the validation schemas. First we have to install, then import. After importing, you can easily attach them to Formik. How to attach to the Formik? Let's see. First I will show you. So what is the concept now? Now delete this validate. Okay. And delete this function. That means now you don't need to write this much lengthy function. So that means to validate, I am writing a lengthy function. It's every field errors we are writing. Now see, let's open the terminal and we will install. Okay, so we will install terminal. Yeah, right. npm install YEP and save it. So the YEP library is installed. Be careful because many people, when they come with a complaint like this library is not working or something, so even capitalization mismatch also, library will not install the same you are looking for. But make sure that you use the correct capitalizations and all when you are doing it. Okay, next. I need to import here, import asterisk as what is it? YEP. From which library? YEP. This is the library. It's all validation schemas are imported. Okay. Now I want to use these validation schemas. So if you want validation schemas, then here we have to use this time validation schema. Previously we used validation which points towards a function. Schema uses a ready-made structure. And who provides the schema? The schema is provided by YEP. YEP have an object. That object will provide. YEP object is going to provide the validation schema. That means this yup object provides the schema. Schema is a structure. How to build the structure like an object, and in that you will have field name. What is the field name? Field name is username. What is the validation for this username? You can use yup dot string. It defines that its data type is string. And what else you want? It is required, dot required, simple. And if required is not satisfied, what message you want? You can put a message. If you don't put a message, default message it will keep. That means these schemas have default message. So if you want your own message, you put a message. What is it? User name. What is it required? That's it. You want to add one more validation, then min. What is min? Minimum how many characters? 4. Number. If it is not satisfied, what is the message? Message is name too short. That is the message. You can change the functions. This is actually in JavaScript we call function chaining. Function chaining means add a function to another function, continuous. So this is first field. Okay. What is another field? Age. Okay. What is the age? Yup. Dot. What is its type? Number. And age is also required. So age required something. And age. So already number is in number indicates. If you want, you can put limit like min. Min is 15. That means, so we will put a message is minimum 15, right? And we use another one max. That means is 30. That means age max 30. These are the limits we are giving. Now next option. Next is what? City. For city, you don't have. How you will write for city? So you write an yup validation for that. There is no yup validation for that. Yup dot. It is string type only. You say required. How it knows required or not? That means it is not aware whether it is required, because even the first one is also a value. So that is the reason we can't depend on only one. Schema is not suitable for every situation. For every situation, schema is not possible. Then what we have to do, we have to write manual. That means we need combination of both. For mobile, we can write. So what is for mobile? That means we are using for what? Mobile. For mobile, what is the validation? What is it? Yup. Yup. It is what? String. And it is also required. You will put a message. What is it? Mobile required. Okay. What is the mobile related? We have to use matches. Matches with what? Regular expression. We need to write regular expression slash plus 91 slash d 10 digits. And if it is not matching, then put a message. What is it? Invalid mobile. So invalid mobile. Like this we need to define. So now the question is it possible to use? Is it possible to use both validation schema and validation? Yes, we can write both. For certain validations where schema is not possible, we verify that by using which one? Validation. That means you have validation and validation schema. And when to use validation? When there is no possibility of a schema, then you have to use validation. Manually you write. Of course, in JavaScript you learned so many elements will be there. For example, input type email. Email will not have a proper validation. If email is not having proper validation, then you disable it and you write your own validation. Right. So here the validation schema is built. And how to display the errors? Same, I am using errors.username, errors.age. I am not changing here. So the presentation is same, only the logic we changed. This time what we are doing, instead of manually writing, we are using ready-made function. That means now you let's see this how it works. Now I am trying to submit the data and click on submit. It says same. All are working. That means here you entered the username, name to short each I am entering a. You see default message came. If you don't give a message, automatically a message will come. You entered some 12, then it minimum 15, some 19, then it's okay. Mobile is required, so 98 invalid mobile, and we have like still invalid plus 91, then it is, and still on submit, it is now submitted. Now the schema is also working. But still we haven't written another validation for city. We have to use combination of we can write. So previously what it is happening, it is verifying, but it is not submitting if all are valid. Why? Because for that we need to explicitly write the logic. If all are valid, then there are no errors, then submit. But schema advantage is it is valid, then it will submit. If it is not valid, it will not allow to submit. These are predefined. Then you don't need to write much logic. So, but rest of presentation is same. Only the difference here is you remove the len function you written and you are just using ready-made schema functions, right? So you have two techniques. One validation, another one validation schema. So here, next step, what we have to do, configure the validation schema using yup object. You have to configure using yup object. So configure the validation schema using yup object. We have to configure validation schema with yup object. So how do we do this here? So we need to set use Formik, just syntax I'm giving. In the use Formik, you have initial values, and we will have validation schema. Here you need to use yup dot object. This object requires the schema. In the schema, we have to define so field name and yup dot data type. After that, the schema function. That means required or min or matches. These are all the schema functions we can use. This is just a syntax. How to define the validation scheme. So we have validation schema with ready-made. But sometimes, remember, these validations are there for email, URL, all. That means you are verifying email address, then ready-made email will be there. So you can use them, or you can write your own, right? You can have both combination. Some you write using schema and some you define by using the validation. So here presenting is same. There is no change. So validation errors are displayed using Formik.errors. Formik.errors object. So what we have to do, Formik.errors.field name. the validation errors. So same concept, we change it a little bit now. So this is example, same, what is it? Form demo dot JSX. Let me copy this example, and in this example, we are using the validation options. That is the validation, right? So we have two techniques. One is how do you define validation manually, how you use a schema. Here one more point is that the point is when it is verifying value, when you submit, it is verifying the value. Suppose I click inside username, actually it is a required, and without entering I click outside, then it is not showing any message because currently it is handling only on submit. We can make it to handle on blur. On change it is already working because if you click on submit, when you are typing, on change is working now. On change it is verifying because on change is already attached to the form. That means on change is attached to the form element, so it is already working. It is working fine. But usually, sometimes what we do when user touch the field without entering anything, he comes out. We will warn him saying that this is required. That means if you want, you can make the validation to fire up in blur also. But again, here so many issues will be there. How to write on blur? See, what you can do is here we are writing change, Formik handle change. So it is using only on change. So instead of on change, not only just on change, you can use on blur. On blur, what is a blur event already we know. So on blur, what we have to do? Formik dot handle blur. Formik dot handle blur. We can use handle blur. That means now what happens here? But still see here, you click inside and you click outside without typing anything, then it shows all messages. That means form validation is working for all of them. Even you write for blur for one, it is working for entire forming. Now in the next level, we will find a solution for this. So first point, it is not just only on change. We can verify on blur. On blur. So for every element, what you can do here, for name, I am writing blur. Of course, for change, we don't have a blur. For this, we are writing blur. That means what will happen here is any field you click and don't enter, it will display. Anywhere it is blur, it is working for, but we can make it work only for specific. For that, we need to learn one more concept, and that concept is form validations are two levels. We have input state validation, form state validation. Input state validation means what? It will verify every field individually. After verifying individually, then it will verify all fields again one time. That means we have two states, input state, form state. If you write both, then it will work perfectly. So initially we can write on blur, we can write on change. Default it is on change, it is working on change. If you want to write on blur, then you can add this event extra. So what is the additional thing you need to write here is another note is, so the default validations, the default validations, the default validations fire up on, so on the Formik change event, you can configure for blur. you can configure for blur event. How? So input type is text. Then you can write change. On change is already there. Formik dot handle change, and we have on blur. We can have Formik dot handle blur. We can define in this way. Now that means for every element there will be several events to attach. For this, they have another solution for this. That means if all events validation should fire up, that means on change it should fire up, on blur it should fire up, then don't need to write every event. Instead of writing every event, Formik have another concept, that is Formik spread approach. Formik spread approach. So Formik spread approach is available. Spread operator. Formik have a spread approach. If you have to write validations for all events, supported by Formik, if you have to write validations for all events supported by Formik, then you can use spread operator. Spread operator by you can use spread operator method, and that method is get field props. You can use a spread operator method called get field props. That means we can use a spread operator method. That means for every element I need on change on blur, on change on blur. Then what you do instead of writing that, so you can write like this. That means you have input type is text. So syntactically we can define input type is text. Here we can use dot Formik dot get field properties props, and the field name. Field name you have to mention. Field name you have to mention. This is simple. Now what it is going to do for that field name? It is going to use all Formik properties. All Formik properties means on change, on blur, whatever it is, on submit. Everything it is going to use for this. But for that we need to just configure that spread operators, spread syntax we need to use. So here we are having a spread approach. Okay, let's do one thing. Now what I am doing is blur on change. I am deleting these two events. That means events are removed now. On change, on blur for name. Okay, on change for this. That means we are changing. This is on blur and on change. On blur is removed, on change is removed. So we are removing those events. That means there are no events defined for the form. So we don't have any events for the form submit. It is showing. And when I am typing, it's not taking them. Why? Because we removed on change and on blur. We have removed. And you see, I click inside, click outside. It's not showing because blur is not working. So now how do we attach? So here we need to use for username. We need to define Formik dot get field properties. Get field properties. Which field? Field name. Field name is user. That's it. That means now I will use the same for everyone. Copy. Get field properties for which one? Age. Age. And get field properties for what? City. And this is get field properties for mobile. That means we are using for them mobile. Now let's run this and see. That means here we are refreshing this, and here I click on click inside and click outside, then it is showing. And I click on submit. I click on submit, it is showing. And I am entering the data, it is working fine, but no event is attached. That means I am not using on change, I am not using on blur. That means if anyone shows the syntax and say ask you that without any event how it is working, that means without events also can we manage third party supports. What we can do is we can use their different approaches and we can implement them. That means we can write the logic in this way by using field properties. This is another syntax. So this is spread approach. That means now it is going to handle two. So it handles on blur and on change implicitly for every element. On blur, on change implicitly for every element. So we have the Formik options. That means so many levels we have done. What is that? One is with validation, another one with validation schema. Validation schema. We have more simple. We have more simple. That means, so this example I will copy again. Formik from demo.jsx. We have more simple technique. More simple technique is nothing but even design also simplified. Previously, what is happening? We are reducing the logic for validation, but design is same. Text box, error message, everything is same. For this also they have a solution. That means Formik provides ready-made components for form. What is advantage? Even design will be simple now. You don't need to design much. With a simple design, we can handle everything. That means what Formik provides. We have Formik components. Formik components are present. Formik components means these are ready-made components. These make more simple. These make more simple. That means the validation become more simple. Not only validation is same, just presentation become more simple. So Formik provides predefined validation, predefined components for form and validation. For form and validation. Implicitly, these components can build the UI and set validation. Implicitly, these components can build the UI and set validation. We have components like Formik, we have form, we have field, we have error message. These are all components. Formik, form, field, error message. These are all the options. These are all components we are having. These are all the components. By using these components, we can even make the design simple. We can make the design simple. How to use this actually syntactically? We have Formik. Formik is going to use initial values. Initial values. It is going to use validate. It is going to use validation schema, and it is going to use submit. All are defined inside Formik. You can have a form, and inside the form you can have a field. Field. This field will have a text or number or password. You can give anything. So, and this under this field you can have an error message. And it can have a field name. For which field name you want the error message. This is the design. That means now your UI becomes more simplified. UI user interface become more simplified. That means you don't need input text, input type number. You don't need to display data definitions, data terms. Of course, presentation you wish how you can do. To display error messages separate. So we have a field for Formik, and we have a component for Formik, and we have a component for form. So Formik and form. So let's see how this works now. That means now I will now design also changes. That means your design also changes. That means actually our design is same every time. So what will happen now? Just let me clean up this. Means entire design I will clean up. Delete. And all this Formik also you delete. That means you don't need to use all this. Just what you do is you use the components. You need to import from the components. What you have to import is you need to import. One is Formik. From Formik, another one is form. From the Formik, form, and another one is field. Okay, another one is error message. This all we need to define. Now let's create a Formik. In the Formik, you need what? Form. Remember, so here very important is form is different, form is different. Both are not same. The first one is HTML form, second one is Formik form. It is not HTML form. A small capitalization problem, it will have issues. That means it is not HTML form, it is a Formik form. It is a Formik form, right? And what is this first? Formik. What it should have? Initial values. What are the initial values? Initial values actually requires an object. What are the objects? You know, username, and we will keep an age, and we will keep an, so suppose city. Here I will just use mobile. We can add others also. I will show you a complete example. Okay, this is initial values. What is next? So you need validation schema, and validation schema. So here validation schema requires, yep, dot what? Object. In yep object, we need an object. This contains what? Username. For username, what you have to use? Yep, dot string. Am I right? And we have like required. So that is like name required. all the validations you need to write here. That means everything you need to define here. So I am writing for one, you write for others, right? Just another one is what? Age. Age is also what? Yep. Yep dot what? Number. And age is suppose required. So this is also age required. And number already have a validation. All the validations you can write like this. Mobile, you know. Okay, next one more we need to write. What is it? On submit. On submit, what we need? We have to collect the values and we need to submit those values. Console.log, whatever the values you submitted, right? Collected. Means actually, we write in the start tag of Formik. You don't need to use Formik hook. Where we use this very much, where we don't have a chance for hooks. Because in old versions of React, we have class components. Class components are designed by using JavaScript class. And you know, in a class, function cannot be a member. You know, na? In JavaScript, function cannot be a class member. JavaScript classes will not allow function as member. So React hooks will not work. That means use Formik, use state, they will not work. Later we will learn about classes. We will discuss about classes. But in classes, there is no chance of use Formik. These all hooks will not work. Then what to do? If use Formik will not work, then you need an alternative for that. And that is components. By using these components, we solve. Right? And here, the form have very simple option. Suppose we are having a heading. So register user, and in the form we have a data list. In the data list, data term, what is it? Username, data definition. Here I just use a field. And what is the field? Field name. Field name is what? User name. And what is the type? The field type. The field type is text. And below that, I want an error message. Just you put an error message. Error message for which field? Name. Name is what? Username. That's it. That means you don't need anything else. That means now I will copy the same. And this is for age. And the field, this is for age. And type is text. This is also for age. One more, we don't have any mobile. I haven't written any validation for mobile. You write because already you have previous example. And this field name is for what? Mobile. And this error message is for what? Mobile. Now you see we need a button in form. Then we are having a button. This is that button. Button type as what? Submit, and button is what? Submit. We are having the submit button. And let's run this and see now. We are executing this. And I click on submit. It is validating. And observe carefully. I say here, this is colors I haven't given. We can just write the colors. You know. What is it? Text danger. I'm not using the colors. You just add the colors here. Right? Just the colors. So now you see name required. I'm typing here. It's everything working fine. So age. So that means if age is not entered, then age is required. You entered some age, then it is fine. And if you entered some mobile, and you click on submit, it will display. It is going to submit. This time it looks more simple. That means no functions, nothing. And your UI is also built in. Just you need to add error message, you need to add a field. No events are required. On change, on blur, nothing. Even I not written on submit also for form. Already on submit is defined in the Formik. For form, you don't need to attach any events. This looks more simple. That depends on requirement, right? That means no one can say that which one is best. Why? Because I don't need this if I am using functions. So, and here again, certain validations I cannot implicitly do. I have to manually write using a function. And these people have again problem with different fields. That means they don't have a field for every type of input. Then what we have to do, we need to use combination of HTML input and Formik input. That's the reason if your form is satisfied with what they are providing, use it. That is the best way. If not, then you have to use a combination. So this is another example, same option. What is it? Form demo.what JSX. This is another example. Now, in this is one concept of third party. We have some more techniques in this that we'll see tomorrow. And tomorrow we will see another third party. This is one Formik, another third party that I will guide you. You have to explore by yourself. Right? I will just give you the guidance. You need to try by yourself. Right? Tomorrow we'll continue with that. Right? Yeah.